you living the divine life? Many of us are not, and there just might be a few things keeping us from this. Welcome to Living a Sacred Life with Dr. Raymond Anderson. In our program, you'll learn to use the tools that have been given to you to make changes that you need, and by doing so, come one step closer to living that divine life. Now, here is your host, Reverend Dr. Raymond Anderson.
Namaste and blessings to you, my divine brothers and sisters. So here we go again, our second week. So are you ready to take another step on our journey of living a sacred life? No, I'm serious. Are you ready? Yeah, now don't just sit there and assume that I'm joking with you. I'm serious. Are you ready? Because your availability to being ready is going to determine how receptive you are to making a change in order to start living a sacred life. So again, I ask, are you ready to take yet another step on this journey? And I already know, of course you are, because that's why we're all here together. I mean, you wouldn't be here if you weren't ready. So, we have a lot to cover this week, so go ahead and get comfortable. Buckle in and get ready for the ride. And if by chance we don't get through everything that I would like to discuss this week, then, it's all fine. It's all good. We'll just simply continue with a part 2 next week. Oh, and before I forget, or before we begin, I'd like to sort of make an announcement that we'll be having some excellent teachers joining us soon. Like who, you ask? Well, how about author, intuitive counselor, and psychic, Colette Barron-Reed. Another author of an amazing book, I Am, Howard Falco. And author of yet another very insightful and timely book, Gay is a Gift, Salvatore Sapienza. Those are just a few of the people who have already confirmed their availability, so be sure that you tune in weekly, and I'd like to thank them in advance. So, okay, here we go. Are you ready? Let's go to it. Mirror, mirror. So as usual, we'll go ahead and begin with a prayer to raise our consciousness and get centered in that state of mind that we all need to be in to move forward and live a sacred life. As we center ourselves and breathe, we inhale. The Holy Ruach flows into our being and fills us with the Spirit of Elohim. We are filled with pure light and pure love. And as we exhale, all doubt, insecurity, and fear are released as we let go and let God. With our next breath, we remember who and what we are. We inhale and exhale and stand in consciousness before the throne of love. In this holy of holies, this hallowed ground where we are bathed in the magnificence of the divine, all thoughts of lack and limitation are released. For we know that it is done according to our thoughts. So we enlarge our thoughts from what is perceived as impossible to a realization of what is possible. And we know that with God, all things are possible. While we are in the flesh, however, we will abide by the laws of nature. Yet we are mindfully aware not to be fooled by the illusion of how things look. We are not fooled by appearances, for we know that back of all is the energetic vibration of the divine. Where others see the impossible, we see with the vision of God. Where others saw the impossible, Orville and Wilbur Wright saw with the eyes and vision of God, and so the creation of the plane was made manifest. Where others saw the impossible, Dr. Martin Luther King and Mohandas Gandhi saw with the vision and eyes of God, and so freedom was made manifest. It has been said that the difficult takes a day, and the impossible takes a week. I say the impossible is already done in the mind of God. There is one eternal now, and so it is done now. All that we desire, we have now. Physically, we are healthy, whole, and cured. Intellectually, we have a sound mind, wisdom, and reason. Emotionally, we have peace of mind, balance, love, and compassion. Relationally, we are surrounded by family and friends, enjoying what we share with those whom we love. Financially, we are prospering in manifold ways, living abundantly. Spiritually, we are eternally at one, divinely aware of all that God is and all that we are as children of the universal oneness. We are divine emanations of the sacred presence, which we call God. We are what we affirm. We do what we affirm. We have what we affirm. For the power of life and death is in our tongue, and therefore we invoke the oneness of life. For it is all God, and it is all good. It is so, and so it is. Amen. So let's get to it. In our last session together, we discussed stories. The stories that we tell and how those stories attract or manifest various things in our lives. Stories and words of scarcity, lack, and limitation will outpicture as like vibration to those stories that we have spoken. Now, today's discussion, we sort of take it one step further. We're going to talk about how a thought, whether consciously or unconsciously held in the mind, will produce after its own kind. The universal mind is like a great garden, and our thoughts are sort of like the seeds, which, when placed in that rich soil, will grow according to the nature of the seed. Just like a farmer. If the farmer plants an apple seed, he expects an apple tree to grow. So too should we expect that our thoughts will produce in like manner. Now, how much sense does it make for a farmer to plant an apple seed but expect an orange to grow? Doesn't make much sense, does it? Well, how much sense does it make for any of us to think lack but reap prosperity? To think illness but reap health? Or to reap anything other than what the energy of our thoughts are sowing into the great garden of the divine? It makes no sense, and yet so many people are living their lives precisely in that manner. Now, you might say that you're not really sure what you're planting. You're not sure what your thoughts are doing. Well, if you're ever unsure of what you're planting, therefore unsure of what you're thinking, all you need to do is look around you. Life presents before you an excellent mirror if we're wise enough to look. Now, I've coached a couple of people for a while, and one thing a lot of clients ask, where do they look? And while the answer I give it's relatively simple, the awakening needed to look truthfully without judgment is the challenge. Now, before I give you the answer, let me warn you. If you do this process in the healthiest, most holistically empowered, and sacred way, you must do so in a mindset of neutrality. Shakespeare once said, "There is neither good nor bad, but thinking makes it so." Meaning, you cannot judge the process. You cannot judge the thoughts. You cannot judge yourself or that which you see when you look into the mirror. Don't judge it. Simply observe. Now, this is important because if you judge, you're going to restrict. If you restrict, it's going to keep the ego in control. The ego is going to continue to justify what it does. It's going to continue to project and protect and rationalize and avoid, and it's going to continue to take advantage whenever it's allowed to do so. Now, the ego, it often gets a bad rap. A lot of people say the ego's bad, the ego's evil, the ego this, the ego that. The ego is a part of us. It also is divine. It does what it does perfectly. However, most of us never retrain it to do what it's supposed to do for our spiritual good. So, the first thing you want to do, don't judge the ego. Don't judge yourself. Don't judge the process. Understand that the ego simply does what it is meant to do. The ego is meant to protect you. The ego, how do I want to say this? The ego, its job is to protect us, what it perceives as being us. Our job is to retrain the ego. It's almost like having a puppy. The puppy's going to do whatever the puppy wants to do. Our job, if we're going to keep this puppy, is to train it so it knows how it's supposed to behave while it's in the house. So the thing you want to do is to retrain your ego so it knows the difference between the real you and the persona that it seeks to defend. So in this process, simply observe, don't judge. We're getting ready to go to a break in a few, and I'm going to tell you I think I have time to tell you this story now. And this story is an excellent illustration of what I mean by not judging or being neutral. So, once upon a time, there was a poor farmer who was dismayed to learn that his horse had died during the night. All the neighbors exclaimed, "Oh, wow, that's terrible." To which the farmer responded, "Maybe, maybe not." Meanwhile, there was a rich man in the village who heard about the farmer's plight, and he decided to give him one of his horses. The neighbors then exclaimed, "Wow, that's wonderful. How marvelous." To which the farmer nonchalantly replied, "Maybe, maybe not." So the farmer's son was out riding that new horse one day, and the horse threw him, and the son was severely injured. Again, the neighbors came and said, "Oh my God, that's terrible. That's just terrible." To which the farmer said, "Maybe, maybe not." In the spring, war broke out in the land, and because the son was still in a cast and injured, still recovering, he was unable to go off to war. And it was a war in which many soldiers were dying. So you see from that story that judging something is good or bad, it's not in the thing or the situation. It's in you. It's in how you choose to perceive it. So when we come back from our break, I'm going to go ahead and answer that question about where do you look. Right now, you are listening to Living a Sacred Life